Guys and girls, unpacking the rental explosion, why it's happening, where it's happening, what is the solution. Stay tuned. We'll talk about it right now.
I'm the ringleader, so listen up.
Good morning.
How are ya?
I'm doing well. How are you, Mark?
Good, thank you. Good, thank you, Mr. Sillage.
The rental explosion. Do you like my explosion in the background?
That is an explosion. You know what? It came out of nowhere because, people were, getting interest rates put up on them. COVID. It's just, we were working out our office Christmas party the last 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and it's just been such a turbulent time for everyone. We had floods, we had fires, we had COVID. There's just been so much to it. And when you look at that rental market, why have the rents increased like they are? Are they going to continue like they are? And it does relate back to a couple of things. And one of the things we're going to talk about is relating back to the trend of being a landlord. And it's at the moment it's a bit uncool to be a landlord.
Well, that's the thing. And when you look at rents, like you said, there the past 5 years, it's been extremely turbulent. I'd say even more recently, just the past couple of years. But in saying that, before then, the past seemed to be about 8 years before that, it was relatively stagnant in terms of rents. It was completely the opposite. It really was just this very, very slow, steady, not much growth at all. And all of a sudden, it just exploded out of nowhere, or it seemed to be out of nowhere.
So someone like there's different metrics out there as well. One of the public statements I saw Meriton release was they're increasing their rents across the board. So they're an apartment-only landlord. I think they're sitting on about 3,500 to 4,000 apartments across Australia. And they're sitting. They've mandated a 23% increase across their portfolio. So a lot of landlords are asking us, how much should it be going up? What is the metric? And I am very sensitive about the topic as well, because this is it's tenants' lives and livelihood that we're talking about. And that if it goes up by $30 a week or $50 or $100 a week, that can really change someone's livelihood. And you don't revel or embellish in the fact that the rents are going up. But then on the flip side, you've got landlords that have been impacted and they rely on that income often. So, we've got landlords that have worked their whole life to have a one-bedroom unit paid off. And then in their mind, that one-bedroom unit is going to support them through their retirement as majority all or part of their income. And then that's been very hard to hold those assets with costs and stuff like that. So it's a real sensitive topic today.
Yeah, well, it's really delicate. And that's the thing with anyone that's renting a property, and for our landlords as well, both mutually rely on each other. So as a landlord, you need tenants obviously there to pay the rent to be able to hold on to the property. And as a tenant, you need a landlord, because if there was no landlords, then there'll be no properties to rent. So both are heavily reliant on each other. And the nature of being what we have in Australia, which is a free market, the government doesn't dictate what rents are set at. It's the market that dictates it. It's landlords, it's tenants, it's what someone's willing to pay, it's what someone's willing to put the property up for lease for. And when you've got those free market flows, when there's these external influences such as interest rates, investors cashing out the market, land tax, all these things here, the amount of people wanting to move to a certain area, that's what pushes these rents up or down. And that's the hardest thing, because right now it's not like landlords are going, I'm putting up my rent on you unfairly, so, and the tenant goes, okay, well, I'm just going to go rent somewhere else. It's happening across the board. Rents are going up absolutely everywhere because tenants, they're pushing it. It's the demand that's pushing it there, and it's the supply on the other end, the lack of, that's pushing it as well. So it's really interesting in terms of if you just let the market do what it's meant to do, and we can see what's happening now, it's flying up. whether that means there needs to be intervention in between. But if there's government intervention, for example, and they want to stop, let's say renters paying too much, well, you've got to be very careful because you've got to balance it on the other end of, okay, well, for the investors, are they going to be able to hold on to the property as well? And what does that mean for their holding costs?
I want to talk more about that why in a second, but just if we pause it for a sec, I do have to take agents out of the equation a little bit. And this is such a sensitive topic that if an agent talks about property prices going up 20% of the year or 30% of the year for buyers of houses, buyers of apartments, they generally don't get shot, for renting, for selling a property more, or for saying, look, the sales market is up. You can sell your property for more. Call me today. Yeah. Now, if an agent does that call out to landlords, the sentiment's very, very different, and that's what we're finding now. That I've seen a couple of agents absolutely nailed and crucified for talking up the rental market, promoting to their landlords that they should be getting more for their rental property, and it doesn't go down well.
The reason why I think that is put simply, if you can afford to buy, this is, I think, my guess, the general sentiment out there. If you can afford to buy a property, you're the rich guy out there. You're buying a property, you own the asset, therefore property is going up in prices. Yes, it hurts to buy it, but then you're going to make money on the other end. Versus the renters, the little guy. They're not benefiting at all from it. It's just making it harder for them to be able to pay their way through. And I think that's why the sentiment out there is a lot more delicate around it.
Good morning, Luke. Good morning, Alain. If rents don't go up, investors will need to sell. That's your cue.
Boom.
That's your cue.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. And as part of our autopsy today, we've done some preparation on what's been trending in the last couple of years, even 10 years we snapped back to. Can we bring that graph up?
Yep. Ready, guys?
Okay. Now, guys and girls, in the autopsy of rents and why is this happening? What is happening? What's caused this in the autopsy of rents going up? We've brought up this graph, which has been done by our friends at realeestate.com.au. So these guys have graphed over a 10-year period the black line. And I want to explain the black line. The black line is called investors purchased. Do you want to explain that, Mr. Silic?
So what they're saying is it's a share of total sales to and by investors. So what this graph is showing on the investor purchase side is between July in 2013 to July 2022, the percentage of investors in the market that are purchasing properties has quite steadily decreased. So we've had about 25% in 2013. Now in 2022, it's dropped down to pretty close to 5%, about 6-7% there, which is a massive, massive drop. And on the flip side, so that's new investors buying into the market, which increases supply rent.
Spot on. So if there's less investors buying, that means there's less in the rental pool. That means with scarcity, you got to pay more. You got to pay more. If there's less apartments and houses on the market, we're going to break that up in a second. You got to pay more. And then let's talk about the red.
Yeah. So on the flip side, we got investors sold. And it's been pretty much, obviously there's the small changes year on year, but it's pretty consistent. The trend is directly the opposite, where investors that were back in 2013, only about 6% of investors were releasing their properties. Now we're finding that's gone up to 25% by 2022. AKA, we have a lot of investors now not buying into the market, and we have a lot of investors exiting the market. So it's a double whammy on both sides.
It's a double whammy. Now, if you think that's an aggressive graph of them selling, you wait and see the next 12 months. Because at the moment, we had this discussion yesterday. We went and looked at 7 properties that are coming on the market this week with us. And of those 7, 5 of those were landlords disposing of their property. So I think when life gets a little bit tough for a family and a home, and they own an investment property, they will dispose of the investment property before they dispose of the family home.
Correct.
If you're disposing of the family home, that's again less properties in that rental pool in the marketplace, which then again leads to rental increases because less out there. So this trend is getting is violent.
It is, and this is the thing. Like, I'll go back to Luke's comment here because it's pretty much the crux of it. And we're not saying it's right or wrong, but with these investors here, because mainly driven by increased holding costs. And what are these holding costs? Their interest rates, their land tax, which we've spoken about on other previous occasions. Because all these holding costs have gone up, for an investor to be able to hold on to property, that's what's pushed these rentals up. Now, if these rentals don't go up enough to a certain extent where an investor goes, I'm happy to hold on to this property, they're going to go sell their investment property. They're not going to go buy another investment property. And that dries up, and we're seeing it happen now, like Mark said, and it's drying up all the stock in the rental market, which is also then pushing up rents even higher. And it's this vicious cycle of like, wait, you need to put rents up to stop rents going up? That doesn't seem to make sense. But it's that really delicate balancing act where if an investor can't afford to hold on to the property, it's actually going to make it even worse for renters as well. And we got to try and find that balance so that rents don't keep flying through the roof, but also that all the investors don't just cash out. We have no rental properties left.
So I think what people have to remember is it's a cycle. And like any cycle, there's been a lot of incentive for first home buyers in the marketplace. There was a huge incentive for investors in the marketplace, but the problem is that was 30 years ago. So when negative gearing was introduced, that was a huge kick for the property investment market, and it was probably a big win for tenants because so many landlords were saying you've got negative gearing now. So many landlords bought properties. That put a downward pressure on rents. That was great for tenants. Whereas we haven't had any landlord incentives for 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years. If anything, if I started on it, I'd give you a list as long as my arm of how a landlord has been treated differently to the rest of the market. Look, just interest rates. Interest rates used to be the same. If you borrowed $1 million for investment or $1 million for an owner occupied, well, now there's as much as 1% different in that interest rate. That's historically never happened. So land tax is another one. Now, Michael, you and I, before we finish, and if you've just tuned in, we're talking about, we're unpacking the rental market at the moment, why this is happening and what's happened and what potentially in the future. Can you explain houses and units for us? Because we're finding that houses are trending differently to how units are trending with rental increases.
Yeah, so what we're finding is a lot of these houses, especially entry-level houses as well, especially on the Northern Beaches market, are growing drastically, even quicker than all the units are. And the main reason for that is land tax. So obviously, of course, you've got interest rates for both unit and a house. But for a house owner, a landlord who owns a house, they are paying a lot more land tax. The land component of that property is much greater in a house than in a unit. And these guys are being stung the hardest, where you can own one investment house on the Northern Beaches and be paying quite a bit of land tax versus you could own one investment house versus you could own up to maybe potentially 3 investment units and be paying the same amount of land tax as it. And I think that's been one of the major factors pushing those rentals up on those entry-level houses, because for some of these landlords here, they're paying hundreds of dollars a week extra just in land tax, as well as their mortgage repayments and the rest.
So there's massive land tax incentives. And to give you an idea, a typical landlord of ours, I shouldn't be racial here, but I will be. You used to have, in our area, the Italians were programmed and motivated, and it was just the thing you do. So you would put your kid into a house when they were young. You get them to buy something and rent it out. by the time you retired, you'd have 2 or 3 houses. A lot of Europeans did that.
Yeah.
That trend's changed, which means those properties are out of the rental pool. So, say your land tax on a $2 million house in an area in our suburb is the same land tax bill as probably 3 apartments, which is $5 or $6 million of apartments. So you can have almost triple the amount of value of asset for the same amount of land tax. Now, to bring that back to dollars so people understand, some of these landlords that have a house or two, say 2, would pay about $800 a week to $900, about $800 or $900 a week, or they would pay on their second house $500 a week a year today for land tax. And if you're renting the house for $800 or $900 and you're paying $500 or $600 on land tax, you haven't even paid your interest bill yet, or your
other bills as well. It's just it doesn't stack up. It doesn't stack up to hold on to the property for an investment.
So taking that back to what rentals has done, if we're trying to understand why houses have increased so much in rent, it's just again back to that scarcity factor. They're just less affordable to own. Yeah.
And that's the thing. So, and like you said before, Mark, there's been no incentives given to investors over the past. It just seems to be the opposite over the past 30 years. And I think because it's just a bit to do, it's like, why would you help the landlord when it's the tenant that's struggling? But it's a flow-on effect. You help. I think there should be incentives both out there for investors and for tenants to help both sides, because both are relying on each other. And from what we've unpacked today, if there's certain things that allow a landlord to not be as expensive to hold on to the property, then it's a flow-down effect pushing down to tenants as well. So I think it should be on both sides.
So, Michael, before we go, actually, one more thing. Can we show the regions of the effect, because different regions have been affected in different ways?
Yes. So this is share of chattel sales by investors. So what we're finding is regional Northern Territory, a lot in 2022, Darwin, a lot, Perth, a lot, Brisbane. So funnily enough, it just seems to be all the areas a bit more remote away from Sydney, because Sydney's a bit more consistent in the middle there, sitting around 25%.
So this is dumping investment properties. This is the dumping of investment properties. Dumping of investment properties means that more people that rents are going to go higher, particularly in those areas. So Northern Territory's been dumping quite heavily. Darwin's been dumping quite heavily. Perth has been dumping. Regional Queensland, Brisbane, Melbourne. Where's Sydney there?
Sydney's right.
Okay, the last one.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's really interesting.
That's a show.
That's it, guys. Hopefully that helps explain a little bit for everyone and a little bit more understanding around it, because I think it's so blown up in the media that it's such a simplistic, straightforward thing of one side's bad, one side's good, or this is the problem. But there's so many layers to it. And I don't think there's one just simple solution to fix it. I think it's an ongoing thing that always needs to be worked on.
And I reckon it's a cycle as well. So, yes, we need to put some incentives in place, and that would be great to help with rents. But I think that it's just that cycle of the market when money gets expensive. This is what people do.
Yeah, got to ride the wave. Brilliant. Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone. See ya. Thanks for watching. Bye.